Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I'm Ethan Lane Miller, and joining me today are
Barak Malkin.
RDY.
I was looking through the old archive, and by that I mean my hastily written notes on what would be interesting Torah Smash topics. And I was looking at this beautiful Excel spreadsheet, and I came across a topic that I was saving for a rainy day. Don't fact check me on it because it's not raining in Austin right now, but I thought this was the perfect time to bring out this episode idea. So, for us to begin, RDY and Barak, how familiar are you with the laws of keeping kosher?
It's kind of my job to know.
I didn't want to assume, but Rabbi, would you be willing to tell us a little bit about just, the basics of what goes into keeping, eating kosher?
Sure. The very, very basics. Most people know that to keep kosher, you would avoid pork. The things that people don't always know is that you would also avoid shellfish and certain other land and air animals, poultry and pigeon and duck. Like these are all good birds to eat. You can't eat any carrion eater like a vulture. You can't eat a hunter like an eagle or an owl. And for fish, for any seafood, the animal has to have both fins and scales, which means no shellfish. Then there's the arguably most important / least important rule about keeping kosher, which is the separation of milk and meat products. And this idea stems from a verse that is both in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy that says, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. And the reason I say arguably most and arguably least is because when that law appears in Leviticus, it is a tag after all of these rituals that are described in the Torah. And historians have discovered that in pagan ritual practices, it was a delicacy to consume a baby goat boiled in its mother's milk sack.
Like this
was a delicacy.
Wow.
So the idea to avoid that was a way of saying, don't go to their ceremonies because you can't eat their food. But that got developed into don't eat any animal with the milk product that comes from the same type of animal, because you may be taking from two generations of a creature, which is highly interpretive. There is nothing that explains that reasoning in the Torah text, though commentators have related it to other ideas in the Torah, like shooing away a mother bird before taking her eggs. So this idea of not boiling a kid in its mother's milk has become not eating milk with meat. Also, that idea of not eating milk with meat became not eating milk with poultry, because when you have a stewed dish, which was very, very common in rabbinic times to make meat last longer and feed more people, you would make a stew out of it and serve it with crusty bread, and that was most meals. So if you have cubed chicken and cubed veal, you might not be able to, at a glance, see the difference. So they said you also can't eat poultry with milk because of a concept called ma'arit ayin, which means the appearance of the eye. So because it looks wrong, it is wrong. And that leads to no milk products with any meat products. And then that leads to separating dishes. And that leads to some people having separate
Kitchens.
ovens, some people having separate kitchens, depending on the volume of food that you might be cooking. But it's really gotten out of control.
I mean, something I love it, and I I owe you $5. You helped point this in the direction I wanted to go, which is that the idea of keeping kosher has also changed and evolved over time. We talk about different dishes, different ovens. One of the things I found fascinating was also the idea that we now have agencies and certifications that are, official, that come with marking something as kosher or not kosher, as wonderful evidence that things change and evolve over time.
Yeah, I didn't even step into the shechting and the different things that make meat kosher or not kosher.
I struggle with we'll get into this, I'm sure, but I struggle with the if it looks wrong, it is wrong concept, because we live in a world today where things are heavily labeled because of, FDA and other organizations and the way things are run. That there's kosher for Passover rules as well that were created in that same vein of these items ground down look similar to these items ground down, so don't eat any of it. So I struggle with those. But as you were talking, I think I figured out his smash, but I don't want to jump to it. So Ethan, I'll let you continue on and we'll see when we get to the guess.
Okay. Have either of y'all seen Babylon 5?
Oh, I'm wrong. Okay.
Great. I haven't either. So this is going very well.
Okay.
So as I was researching for this, I discovered that there's a character in Babylon 5 named Susan Ivanova who is Jewish. So the story of Babylon 5 is that the space station Babylon 5 is a neutral ground where diplomats from different alien cultures come together. And one day, her childhood rabbi visits her on the station. And it leads to a discussion of how difficult it is to determine what is kosher or not from food that is outside Earth. So the rabbi says, food that's not specifically mentioned in the Torah was probably fine. Susan was able to bypass the issue completely because she doesn't keep kosher herself. So, what is the smash of today's episode?
Okay, first of all, it's not my sister Susan. It's a different Susan.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just want to be clear.
Unless she found a time machine and has moved forward ahead into is Babylon 5 ahead in the future or a long time ago?
Oh man, we're gonna have people write in. I think it's the future.
Okay, I think so too.
Yes, the main story takes place between 2257 and 2262.
Okay,
and
all right.
If there's a concern about if these are animal products from space,
or
I think just
food.
anything from space,
alien food. Here's my
food not of this earth.
Here's my guess, because it's Ethan. I think that we are going to be focusing heavily on the food replicator kosher rules from Star Trek.
Oh, we're going to talk so much about it, Barak. Even bigger picture. RDY, what's your guess?
How to deal with foods that we just don't know about, which came up actually in the Jewish world relatively recently in the last few years, about quinoa on Passover.
You are essentially both correct. I want to take an analysis and a look at food from science fiction and fantasy and play the age-old game, kosher or not kosher.
Oh, wonderful. That's a great way to do it. I love this.
So my first question, just to kind of start us off, is there a particular food from science fiction or fantasy that you are dying to try?
Blue milk.
Solid. Well, liquid.
Second breakfast.
just meal category.
Yeah, let's just add, I want the world to accept a second breakfast. I finish my early, like my yogurt and granola. I see my kids' pancakes and I go, I should eat that too. Right?
That's how you get a dad bod.
Yeah.
Well, Romulan ale.
Is that what you're going for?
Yes.
Pretty good.
Okay. Dwarvish ale and elven wine.
I'm sure there's other foods. I have cookbooks upstairs. I have a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cookbook, and I think we have a Star Trek cookbook. Like, there's a lot of
TMNT cookbook. Is that just pizza?
It's a lot of weird pizzas, but no anchovies.
Yeah, they don't like it.
God help you if those anchovies.
So one of the things I noticed as I was looking up different foods from Star Trek is, number 2 on my list is Klingon blood wine, which is produced from the blood of serpent worms. I don't think that would be kosher, would it?
Well,
I,
there are actually other rules about what makes wine kosher.
I was gonna say, go ahead.
These rules make me uncomfortable. I'm going to be
Really?
Yeah, because grapes are a fruit and fruit and vegetables need no certification, they're kosher. And so if you're going to, if you're not going to put bacon in your wine, which I hope no one does ever, um, then there shouldn't be a problem. But because wine is a ritual item, the rabbis get their togas in a bunch, and they say that you can only purchase wine that is produced by other Jews. And that then they extend that to beer. And there's a relatively famous rabbi, one of my favorite Talmudic rabbis, Rav Papa, who was known to be a not only a corpulent enjoyer of all things dietary, but a gourmand when it comes to beer. And because he wanted to try different types of beer, he would make a show when he would purchase beer from a non-Jewish purveyor. He would have them roll a sealed barrel out into the street in public so that everyone could see that he was buying a sealed barrel and not something that had been used before. Because if it's been used, then it might have been used in a pagan ritual. And we don't want to use wine for our rituals that might be used in a pagan ritual. And then because beer can also be substituted for wine sometimes for lack of wine, they also had to be careful with beer.
I should have figured it out that the guy who is such a good cook and a rabbi would have a lot to say about the laws of Kashrut.
Yeah, this is true.
I would argue that you said it was Klingon
Blood wine.
blood wine. Klingons are Jewish, so they probably have their own rituals about how to make this passable and permissive for their purposes. Likely a very kosher process.
Miriam Mora, please write in.
Oh, there's also the law that this is actually a Noahide law and a Noahide law is a law that applies to all humans according to Jewish law. And one of those laws is not to eat the blood of an animal.
Yeah, I've heard that one, which is why I thought I'd start with Klingon blood wine. It is literally from the blood of a serpent worm.
Yeah. And I don't know what a serpent worm is, but it sounds
Well, let's say, are serpents kosher to eat and are worms kosher to eat?
no and no. How to Eat Fried Worms, totally unkosher book.
But maybe a serpent worm is actually like a kind of chicken or something.
A Klingon chicken?
Who knows?
It's still blood.
I would still, you're not allowed to drink blood. Okay.
I feel based on an interpretation that Klingon blood wine is probably not kosher, and I would probably still drink it. I'd at least try it.
I mean, if you're trying it, I'm trying it.
I don't think I would be in a scenario where they would offer me something like that. But if I was,
You mean in an imaginary world?
I'm sure if I was, I would be way too intimidated by them to say no, and I'd have to. But I also am a firm believer that you should try everything at least twice, because the first time you might have gotten like a fluke cook or something, like in terms of food. You should always try it a second time. So part of me thinks that I would at least try it once, but I don't want to.
Okay. Totally reasonable. Here we're not here to yuck other people's yums. We respect each other's choices.
We just want to make sure they're kosher yums.
Yeah. I don't think I would drink a lot of blood wine, but I'd at least try it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're gonna shift focus a little bit and go into the world of D&D. Are you two familiar with D&D?
I've played once or twice a week.
Yeah. A week. Are you familiar with the third level Conjuration, create food and water?
I am.
Yep.
So it reads as follows. You create 45 pounds of food and 30 gallons of water on the ground or in containers within range, enough to sustain up to 15 humanoids or 5 steeds for 24 hours. The food is bland but nourishing and spoils if uneaten after 24 hours. The water is clean and doesn't go bad. Would that food be considered kosher?
Yeah, that's mana.
Interesting. I think it would probably, while I wouldn't agree with this, it would probably follow the if it looks bad, it is bad law. So as long as it is like if you created for kosher laws like a cheeseburger I would say not kosher, but if you're creating a nice Shabbos challah with that spell for 15 people and get some French toast out of it and some nice toasted challah bread, whatever, that's probably okay.
I think that the description of from the spell reminds me of the description of mana from like midrashic interpretations. In the Torah, it says it's sweet, that it has almost a taste of wafers made with honey, and
The Torah says wafers made with honey.
that it tastes like it, that it had that flavor.
Oh, that's fine.
And it also says that it could be ground and cooked, and then it tasted like cakes baked with oil. And then in the Midrash, it suggested that it tasted like whatever the eater wanted it to taste like. I think that's from the Talmud. And that makes me think that it's tofu.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
tofu on its own, not sweet. It's a little bit tangy if you eat it totally plain, but it soaks up whatever you're cooking it with. So it has that midrashic sense to me of like whatever they wanted it to taste like. You want it to taste like teriyaki, you cook it in teriyaki sauce. You want it to taste like Mexican, you cook it with cumin and chili powder.
Yeah, I
So
think kosher. I think kosher on that one.
Yeah, totally.
okay, so you think that a rabbi could give this the heck sure, it would be considered kosher?
My cleric approves.
Oh, well played. Okay, cool. All right, moving on to something that is pretty quickly not becoming a hypothetical. Would we consider meat that is cloned in a lab kosher?
I would. The rabbis probably wouldn't.
It's so interesting, Barak. I agree with you. I think I would consider it kosher. To be fair, I don't keep kosher myself, so I'm maybe not the greatest arbiter of this.
Right. Yeah,
But
same.
I truly would love to hear RDY's thoughts on if we had bacon meat that is grown from from something cloned in a lab. It was never from a live creature. What do we think about that?
But actually,
Oh, please.
so the way I understand the cloning process for making meat is that they use muscle cells from an animal and culture that in the lab. So it starts off with cells. So at a micro level, it's the same animal. Therefore, it shouldn't be, if it's a non-kosher animal that's being cloned, it shouldn't be considered kosher. If it's a kosher animal that's being cloned, it should. This was a debate recently as well, and I think Barak, you are correct that the rabbis said no. At the time, I didn't pay too much attention to it because at the time I wasn't eating meat at all, so I didn't care. But there is a concept in the Talmud of combining kosher and non-kosher things to create something new, or creating something out of nothing. And so if they are a brand new thing, if it's considered, yesh me'ain is the something out of nothing rule, and so if it's considered yesh me'ain, then it's technically not kosher because you're creating something that the Torah doesn't comment on, and this new entity might not retain its kosher status. Like it might, but it might not. Because
Wait, but you just said that D&D free magic food is mana, but that's something from nothing. So you're countering yourself here.
I am countering myself on two different issues because what makes it something from nothing is combining it with other with other possibly non-kosher items.
Oh, okay.
So the and I also said that I consider create food and drink to be mana because it comes from some sort of mystical source, which to me are divine.
But what if the create food and water spell required items right? You have to either use your hands or spoken word or have material items. What if those material items were not kosher and you just had to
Yeah.
sprinkle them on the lawn and then say the spell?
I believe so. I believe this spell has somatic and verbal and material components.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the material component is something like a crust of bread or something like that, like
Okay.
crumbs,
Oh,
in which
okay.
case, kosher.
Okay.
I'll have to like look at my sources to confirm that, but
I'm
I think
gonna,
I
yeah.
don't think it's like anything that would register as non-kosher. That would be the material components of that spell.
I'm gonna reel my response back a little bit in terms of the cloning. If it is using an original cell and that cell is a starting point, then I would agree that it's not kosher for those that abide. But if this is like you're using the cell and then using a printer copier to scan copy it, I would say it is kosher because then there's no entity of that was from a living thing. It's like a genetically created from different molecules, which we'll probably get to when we get to the food replicator. But I'd say maybe then cloning, if you have to start with a basic cell and expand it from there, I would then say not kosher because a part of it is from that original piece.
So,
Yeah,
so just to
from a
make sure I'm
non
understanding what you're saying, Barak, you're saying if what you are eating contains at least one cell from the original
Yeah.
creature, that is not kosher. But if what you're eating is just the copy, just the clone, just the what is like essentially 3D printed, then in your mind that is kosher.
Yeah, if the 3D printing materials don't break any laws of kashrut.
and if the and like a lot of times to make this meat viable as meat, it has to be grown in some sort of nutrient-rich serum like fetal bovine serum.
Hmm.
And that in and of itself is not kosher, which would render the meat unkosher. And this is like hotly debated now. And as I'm like quickly trying to look stuff up as we talk, I'm seeing three opinions. One is it has potential to be
Are they all
kosher.
from the same rabbi?
No. One is that they have the potential to be kosher. One is that it needs more research, and the other is no, not kosher. So no one says yes, but the three opinions by these two rabbis I looked up are maybe, possibly, or no.
Yeah, in my gut that feels right.
It's very Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, the other thing I was considering with this was, does it matter if the animal that it originates from is considered kosher in terms of like all other aspects?
Like if they cloned a chicken, is it kosher?
Yeah. Like I started with the
Uh,
like more controversial like can I eat cloned bacon? But what about otherwise kosher animal?
Cloned matzo ball.
If it is developed in something that's kosher, then it should be kosher. And also like the meat substitutes, like the wheat and soy proteins that they like cultivate to turn into the chewiness of Impossible burgers and that kind of thing, totally kosher. There's no problem with that because it's all vegetarian.
Do you think we'll see a future where rabbis are going around and giving their blessing and koshering the food cloning labs?
100%, and I tell you why.
Because Jews are
Be-
good entrepreneurs.
because they can make money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the part about kashrut that really leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Oh, there was a food joke right there.
Can you insert can you insert a boom?
Or a little cricket chirping before
Yeah.
Barak reacts.
Can I tell a quick story about kashrut, even though I've used a lot of your time?
Please, this is the point. I'm loving it.
So, because the rules of kashrut are so complex, they've become divisive in some ways in Israel. And having only a mild awareness of this 24 years ago when Natalie and I moved to Jerusalem for our first year of HUC, I meant to ask her the question, hey, we're going to be living here for 1 year, and it would be interesting to try to at home keep a kosher kitchen, even though, you and I don't keep kosher and we don't think it's important, but to just try it for a year might be fun. Like that's what I meant to ask. My words were, what do you think about keeping kosher this year? And before I got year out, she was like, no way, absolutely not gonna do it. This is disgusting. And what she was so vehement about was not kashrut itself, but what kashrut has become in terms of political power, in terms of making money, in terms of all of these things that are antithetical to our morals and ethics as a family and as a couple. So we never tried it. But they do things like, in Israel they do things like withhold kashrut certifications if they have a disagreement with the owner, not a disagreement on kashrut, a disagreement on anything.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
We kept kosher-ish when I was growing up. Like we would change over all the cabinets and plates for Passover. We had like a special trunk downstairs with Passover plates and dishes and bowls and silverware, and we would turn over like the whole house. But outside of that, and we didn't, I think growing up we didn't cook non-kosher foods in the house. But at this point, like I mostly eat vegetarian slash vegan now anyway, because my wife is vegetarian, but it's healthier and I've come accustomed to the taste, and my body has shown me that like I can't eat too much of other stuff because it doesn't like it when it has like too much bad food, which many non-kosher foods are, loaded with things that aren't good. And so I just eat healthier, which leads me to be kosher adjacent, I would say. But my only restriction is that I can't eat the plate. That's the only thing that doesn't agree with me.
So are you a fan of
but
burritos? Because that's in a way you're eating the container that the food is in.
No, that's not. It's not a plate.
Okay, just checking.
What if the plate was made of chocolate?
Oh, that's totally fine. If you serve me a dinner on a chocolate plate, that's okay. I guess it's more the ceramic that I'm allergic to. Is probably what causes my stomach to be so upset.
But it's okay if something was like gold plated with edible gold.
Yeah.
So if I clone a chicken, like a fully grown chicken, not the meat, I clone a chicken, it is killed in the proper way. Is that meat from a cloned chicken kosher?
This is a different kind of cloning. You're talking about creating a new animal, not processing the meat.
Correct. I have cloned a chicken. I have, or more likely, a chef has properly then killed and cleaned and prepared this chicken. Is that kosher?
I would say yes.
Yeah, I'd say yes.
Okay.
You can.
What if?
Where's the debate there?
Well, I'm teeing up this next one. If I
like, what about Dolly, that famous sheep? Because sheep are kosher. Do you think maybe someone could have eaten her?
Yeah,
well, they named her. That's hard.
Yeah, that's a problem. I don't. If it's named, I'm not eating it.
Whatever. If I'm surviving on K2, I would eat either one of you.
All right. Well, it's nice knowing you. Okay.
I promise I will never be stranded on K2.
Not with me, anyway.
What if I eat this cloned chicken and then I eat the original chicken? Is that count as taking from two generations?
Well, I mean, you're not going to do that at the same time.
Maybe I'm hosting a big family dinner.
You can have milk. So again, like that's not the rule. Is not don't eat two chickens who might happen to be related to one another. Also, like that old meat is probably going to suck. But the
because you've had to wait so long for the first one to grow to the
got a full-grown chicken who's going to get cloned and until another full-grown chicken. I don't even know the chickens live that long. So there is nothing that like if a baby cow grows up and is slaughtered along with its mother, there is nothing that says you can't make with those burgers. It's all about don't boil a kid in its mother's milk, and it becomes about milk and meat. And the idea that was even possible was so far out of the minds of anybody creating halakha, Jewish law, that it's not even a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am kind of asking it though, but
I know, right?
I think you'd have to ask if you cloned a cow, a calf. The calf grew up, the calf clone grew up. You milk the original cow and eat it as the use that milk as cheese on the burger of the cloned cow. Now, well, you still have the overall don't eat meat and dairy,
Yeah.
but you're even closer to the true meaning of the yeah. I think either way, it's gonna
Yes.
be
So this is under the ruling of Kal v'chomer, which means in Latin it's called a priori. There's no really good English translation, but in legal language it's a priori, which means if there's something that's already not something we do or something we do, and you make a more complicated version, then it's still not okay. So there you go.
yeah.
so it's an answer to the. But what if I do blah 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 blah?
Yeah, because it's the same.
Okay.
Because X, Y, and Z are the same as A, B, and C, just more complicated.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to be mindful of the time, so I want to help wrap us up by talking about what Barak mentioned, the food replicator from Star Trek, a wonderful piece of technology that converts energy into matter. If I order replicated bacon, energy converted into matter, is that kosher?
Under the statute of Ma'arit Ayin, that if it looks wrong, it is wrong, no, it's not kosher. On the other hand, turkey bacon has certification on it, and it looks like bacon. Not exactly like it, but it looks like bacon. Vegan
Yeah.
bacon has kosher certification, and it looks like bacon. Vegan cheese, you can put it on your turkey sandwich and not have a problem with the halachic authorities. Although, in my opinion, those should all be declared not kosher because of the concept of ma'arit ayin. If it looks wrong, it is wrong. And in having this very debate with a modern Orthodox rabbi years and years ago, he said to me, everyone knows about vegan cheese. It's not a problem. And I looked at him and I said, everyone knows chickens don't make milk. And he just kind of froze. So I say my personal philosophy is you have to measure everything with the same stick. So if you are keeping kosher because it's important to you, and then you follow the rules. And Ma'ari Dayan is one of the rules. And therefore it looks wrong. Now, are you asking me, would I eat it? Yeah, I would try.
I just found out last week that people take banana skins and make bacon. Have you heard about this? Banana skin bacon?
No.
It looks delicious. I haven't tried it yet. We haven't done it. We're going to try it this year because banana skins are edible, but nobody eats them. But it falls under the same rules. I would say that if you follow the if it looks wrong, it is wrong, probably not kosher. I am not of that. Granted, I'm not kosher, but I don't like the let's just be safe in case there's any idiots out there and just say all of it because we don't really want to rule constantly. This will just make it easier on us to just say it's all wrong.
That's a
If
great way to describe Ma'ari Dayan. Let's make it safe in case there are any idiots out there.
yeah, I'm so sorry if you keep kosher with those rules. That is you're a
I'm sorry
wonderful
if you keep
person.
kosher.
No, I have people that I know people who keep kosher.
Ethan said he wasn't going to yuck anyone's yum. I never agreed to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say that the food replicator is not utilizing the cells. It is utilizing some higher form. It is probably all wheat and vegetable, honestly, like to create a right consistency of whatever you want.
Energy.
No.
Oh, it's energy?
It
What is
is.
it?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So it is literally converting energy into matter.
Great. I think it's totally fine then. If it is created by something that is not following the rules of the written law, I would say it's totally fine. Just like veggie bacon, turkey bacon, vegan cheeseburger, all of those pieces to me, totally fine. But the looks wrong is wrong camp would say absolutely not.
And that is
Ah,
one of the written rules.
if it looks wrong, it is wrong. That's a written rule.
That's how they got to separating chicken from milk.
All right, fine. I think it's fine, but I don't keep kosher. Who are we to judge?
And that's exactly my point. Why, like, if you really are going to keep kosher, you should keep kosher, and you should follow all the rules. It's the wishy-washy, like, oh, I keep kosher except when it's delicious. That I'm like, really? Do you pop quiz hotshot? Do you know how many times dietary laws are given in the Torah?
42.
It's fewer than.
613.
All right, now you're just messing around with your.
18. I'm out.
It's 4.
42.
The first time it's to Adam and Eve, where God tells them that they can have all the plants they want. So basically, God tells them to be vegetarians. The second time is to Noah, where God says you can eat anything you want, plant or animal, as long as it's dead first. Don't eat blood. Then Moses and God gives Moses dietary laws twice. They're nearly identical, and in 2 different books of Torah. And those are the laws that we would call Kashrut.
Hmm.
So the way I interpret that sequence of giving dietary laws is like this. When God spoke to Adam and Eve and said, I want you to be vegetarians, that's really the way God wants us to eat. That it's not human nature because our biology gives us teeth that are made for a variety of things and a stomach that can digest a variety of things. So and desire to eat these things, those are all part of our creation. So it's against human nature to be vegetarian, but it is, as Barak has already mentioned, good for you. It is environmentally sound, better for the planet, and cheaper. The way God said to Noah, you can eat anything you want as long as it's not got its blood in it. That's the way humans want to eat. We want to eat everything. We want to taste things, we want to try things, we want to find all the delicious things all over the world from any animal that creeps, crawls, or flies or swims.
Can I add something to that too?
Yeah.
I've heard that part of that new ruling was because prior to the flood, there was a lot of anger and war and killing of other man, and this was kind of God's way of saying, stop killing each other. If you need to hunt and kill some animals and eat some animals instead.
That's an interesting way to interpret it, but I interpret it I like that.
It didn't work.
Yeah.
It did. There was still lots of war after that point.
Sure. I would say that if we're strictly looking at the dietary laws and how it changes, that God tells Noah to eat the way humans want to eat. So God tells Adam and Eve to eat the way God wants us to eat. God tells Noah to eat the way humans want to eat. To Moses, the 2 times Moses gets dietary laws, this is our compromise, where God says, okay, you want to eat meat, and I get it. And I want you to not eat meat, and you get that. So let's find a way to mix the two so that you're eating the meat of docile animals that aren't hunters, that aren't scavengers, typically, that will allow you to take on the qualities of the milder, dociler animals, the you are what you eat thing. And at the same time, you're going to get some of that desire of what you want.
Hmm.
And and so the idea that anytime we sit down for a meal, that we are conscientious of the compromise between we, the eaters, and nature, God, the world, the providers, that there's a give and take, and that we can sit down and say, I appreciate this food and I'm thankful for the people who made it and the land that it grew on and everything that produced it and everything that got it to my plate that Brock's not going to eat. That then I think participating in that compromise is also a form of kashrut. I wouldn't go so far as to call it kashrut because kashrut is what we've been talking about and this is not that. But it's a way to say, like, yeah, I'm part of the compromise. I would even go so far as to say offering the blessings before and after a meal are a way to be part of that compromise. and say thank you.
Just got a Venmo request on my phone.
For what?
I've been waiting for you to see that. You said you owe me $5, so I requested it.
No.
Venmo request from David Young, $5 for leading questions.
We have it on tape. You said you would.
It's true. That's true. Is it tape though? Because it's all digital. I feel like,
I'm old.
Yeah.
Call it tape.
Any last words before we close out this episode?
I love when nerd culture gives us fun, unique foods. I will say, if you look closely at a lot of the Star Trek foods, at least, and some of the Star Wars ones too, they are often just fruits that you just usually don't see. Because during the tail end of COVID, we started doing a lot of, hey, let's try new fruits. And every time I went to the supermarket, I would pick up a fruit somebody in my house had never eaten before.
Like a rambutan or a Buddha's hand.
Yeah, like all those really interesting ones, right? You start with the popular dragon's fruit and star fruit, right? But you move on to some other really weird ones, and we would guess this is the color on the outside. What color is it on the inside? And then I started watching Star Trek, right? And a bunch of the Star Wars shows. So many of the fruits we ate just show up because they look weird, but nobody usually picks them up off the shelf. And so many of those futuristic foods are just fruits and vegetables anyway.
Nice.
Nobody they wouldn't be on the shelf if nobody picked them up.
Sure, that's fine. That's true.
The people who do the work of getting those weird looking fruits to the set are called food stylists. It's an actual position that people do the hard work of setting up a beautiful scene that has food in it, that, whether it's a family sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner or a science fiction world with the strangest fruits that they can find. There are people doing the job of finding all these beautiful things.
Nice.
I will leave you with, in my research, I found someone who posed a question. If you eat kosher, do you also keep kosher in video games? Like if you presented food, if your character in the game is presented food, does your character keep kosher? And there were several responses, including a response from a rabbi. But the one that stood out to me was a simple response that said, quote, "I keep kosher. I never heard of video games that were edible," end quote.
He sounds like he has the similar allergy that I do to plates.
Yes. He has Barak's plate allergy.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And why do Jewish podcasters always answer a question with a question? Why not? That's not making the cut.
Not at all. But
What
I'm
if
going to put that in.
Oh God, please don't put that in.
Please don't.
I think I'm just going to keep for the post credit. Oh God, please don't put that in.
And then people will be like, "Whoa, what
the heck
what
is
did he say?
I don't remember."